Good morning. And so this is take two. I apologize for the lateness in our stream. I actually thought that I was recording and I wasn't. So, welcome. If you all have been sitting here waiting for us, thank you for your patience. And so, we're going to just jump right in and get started. I want to welcome you to Soul Healing, the podcast. We have another very exciting topic. It's been a few weeks since we have jumped in here. And so I am happy to be with you all for another very, very important show. And so, just to give you a little bit of background, Soul to Soul Healing, the podcast, is sponsored by Journey Healing Institute. And Journey Healing Institute is a nonprofit dedicated to creating healing centered education and programming for Black, Brown, women of color, and our communities. And so, in this space, we have really deep conversations about healing, about wholeness, about wellness, and about empowerment. And it's always rooted in culturally relevant spiritual healing technologies and ancestral wisdom. And so I am Dr. Kimberly J. I will be your podcast host for this morning. And I am also the founder of Journey Healing Institute. And I am joined today by Miss Kira A. Betford, who is an educator, a personal trainer, a mom, a wife, and the founder of Neurocatalyst Academy, which is a micro school that centers the educational needs of Black and Brown neurodivergent children. And it is located right here in Mesa, Arizona. And so you'll get to learn a little bit more about Kira and her work and the relevance of and how it relates to our today's topic. And so today's topic, neurodivergent and Black, raising our kids in a system not designed for us. And we can take this in so many avenues or so many areas, right? But today we're just going to focus on neurodivergency and what is meant by that. It is a new term or a new concept that I'm going to have Kira unpack for us. But when I think about it, it really sits in this space of having and the way that we learn, and with Black people as a collective, in the way that we have always learned or been or are connected in ways that are different in terms of how we learn, in terms of how we integrate information, in terms of how we process, in terms of our need for movement and connection and community. And so you'll hear, even though we're focusing on neurodivergency, what will come out of this conversation is, oh my gosh, I was like that, and we didn't have a label for that, or we didn't have a name, or there was no diagnoses for that, because now we're in this era of naming and diagnosing, everything. And so we're just really going to unpack a lot of that terminology and look at the ways that Black students, young Black students in particular, have been demonized, pathologized. You get into the school to prison, you talk about the school to prison pipeline. Well, yeah, that's rooted in our children not being able to be in safe educational environments, our children not being able to learn in the way that honors their way of learning, our children being labeled as behavioral problems, as defiant, as unable to learn and to integrate, when they are being forced to learn and to integrate in a system, as the topic says, that was not designed for us. And so, with that said, I am going to turn it over to Kira to talk to you a little bit about her work and what inspired her to open up Neurocatalyst Academy, and to kind of unpack some of the key concepts and the terminology that we talked about. And so, Kira, if you can just briefly introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about neurodivergent. What is it that you mean, we mean, community means when we talk about neurodivergency?
Oh yes. So as you said, I already introduced myself. I'm Kira. I am an educator. I'm a mom. I've worked with neurodivergent children. I'm also a professor, also in my own school. Kind of what led me down the path is I've always had a passion for education. So I've worked in the classroom. Worked as admin in the school systems and everything. And I also kind of had my own venture being a homeschooling mom and having my own, experience with a neurodivergent child. And that's kind of what led me down the path into opening up my own space for other families and other experiences with, his problems that he was having at school. My son, as bright as he is, as loving, as bubbly as he is, within 2 years, he had been over 6 different schools. Each school that we've had was the same struggle. We tried public schools, we tried charter schools, we tried private schools, we even tried micro schools, which kind of led me down the path to, starting my own micro school. We tried so many different options for him, and every time we tried something, it was the same rhetoric. He'll start off okay. A couple months down the line, we get the message or get a call saying, this is not a good fit, this is not working out. Constant behavior problems, suspensions, and things like that, which led me kind of going down a path of, homeschooling him. And after homeschooling him for a while, I met, other families who were kind of going through the same struggle, had the same similar story as mine. So it led me to start Neurocatalyst Academy. But to kind of explain to people like what neurodivergent is and what the terminology is, I know it is a new term. In fact, I had never heard of what neurodivergent was prior to my own experience going through the neurodivergent world. But what neurodivergent is, it basically means a person's brain works and learns to process the world differently than social norms or considerations as opposed to a neurotypical person. You have neurodivergent people. It has nothing to do with necessarily intelligent base. It doesn't mean that intelligent processing is any different than, a regular person. It's just the way they process things, the way their brain operates, and the way they socialize into the world that's a little bit different than other people. And typically the terminology for neurodivergence, what they have is neurodivergence is a word that describes people whose brains don't operate in a standard one size fits all way. This includes things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia, and other learning processing differences. It doesn't mean something is wrong. It means the brain works differently. And this is something as a mom and even as myself, as a late diagnosed person, that I had to learn and had to learn what the term neurodivergent was, learn what ADHD is, learn what autism is, and kind of unlearn what I had my thoughts of. Because when I first heard, in fact, I tend to tell the stories about my own diagnosis. When I first heard about me being ADHD, I laughed at it because I'm like, I'm not hyper. I don't run around. I don't, I've never had those issues, but it took me learning what ADHD was, what it looked like, how those symptoms played along for me to be like, oh my God, this is me. This is who I am. This is, why I've struggled and why I never, felt supported or felt like I always called myself the puzzle piece that didn't fit in, or I always felt like, the eyeball out. And having these terms and having these terminologies is almost like an eye opening and it's a reawakening for people. I've discussed with a lot of women who have gone through their own journeys and found out their diagnoses. A lot of them have a similar story. It came with them finding out through their child and them, finding out through their own kids and then making their own journeys and then find out for themselves, what that was. And one thing I can say is that being able to educate myself in neurodivergency has helped me to be able to provide support and provide a space for my own child and also open up a space for other kids. And, that's what kind of Neurocatalyst Academy came from, is being able to provide that space for other kids so they don't have to go through the same struggle that many of us did growing up and that, I see so many kids going through today.
Yeah. So one of the things that strikes me is that I've been in this space of really digging deeper into spirituality and intuition and intuitive, and that brings you down a different path of the way in which highly sensitive, because that's how I see a lot of these students as well, or these children as well, as highly sensitive, that
Mm-hmm.
can really tap into energy, and they are so sensitive that they are really affected by energy, and sometimes by negative energy or dense energy, or and there's a reaction, and they don't even are not even aware of how and why they're reacting the way that they are. And so what I have noticed is that a lot of these children are highly intuitive as well, which means they are getting information, they are learning using a different path, a different method. And this is a society that says, oh, that's woo woo, that's but that is another way that they are receiving information. That is another way that they are learning, through movement, through sound, through connections, through touch, and some, no touch, so it just, again, is these all of these various ways of knowing that we don't pay attention to, because society says, the system that was built says, okay, here's the classroom, here's the structure, everyone sit with your hands folded, everyone does what the teacher says, even though the teacher might be an asshole, even though the teacher may be causing harm, even though the teacher, you know what I'm saying, but do what you're told, be quiet, stand in a straight line, and so that when we talk about the system, because we have to name the system that
Mm-hmm.
was created, that does not celebrate the diversity in the ways that we learn and the ways that we process. So can you talk a little bit about that systemic harm and how our children have been pathologized as behavioral issues, and kind of what you have started as an educator? So even, taking aside your head as mom, as an educator, what have you seen on the front lines?
So it's funny you said it like they're highly intuitive. So this is a true thing. One of the gifts and also curse about being a neurodivergent is we kind of joke about how we can read the room. Is that when you can walk into the room, you can read the energy, you feel the energy, and it's a gift and a curse. Because when you feel the energy, it's like you already know if it's a trusted situation, if it's not a trusted situation. And our children are like that. As you become an adult, you kind of learn your way to navigate it through that type of lens. But when our children are in those situations, they know when they're overstimulated, they don't know how to react to those things. So they're high energy, they're high functioning beings. They can read. I always say that they're superheroes. I look at them as like they're very highly intuitive and superheroes. In fact, it's a theory called what they talk about the neurodivergent brain. They say that a long time ago they call it the hunter and gatherer brain. So different time period before the modern society and before the agriculture world, that the neurodivergent brain was, especially someone like who has ADHD, their brain was highly functional because they can function in basic chaos. That our kids function great in chaos. I know with me, I function in high chaos. That I need high movement, high, movement all over the place. That if it's stationary, that I can't function that way. That we need routine, but at the same time, we function a lot better with, I want to say chaos, but we kind of struggle with chaos. We function better with chaos. We need that kind of loud sense. And when our children are like that too, where our children, they can feel senses, and they're highly functioning, highly energetic beings. And what our system does is our system kind of sets up that you have to fit into this cookie cutter. And if you don't fit into this cookie cutter, then you're not a well productive citizen. That if we look at how our and I watched this video. I know I'm kind of rambling, but I
No,
watched the
no, this
video
is great. Hmm.
about this guy, and he was talking about how what ADHD and kind of autism is, that we live in a capitalist society.
Hmm.
And one thing about capitalist society is that your level of, success, and your level of, being a highly functioning citizen is how well you can produce, how much you can produce, how well you can function, how much you can produce and work for others.
Hmm.
And when you're unable to do that, then you're labeled as something is wrong with you. You're not functioning.
Mhm.
And this is where our society kind of dysfunctions, and this really does our children a disservice. There's a theory called the dissert theory, that we allow ableism, that our school systems are built around Eurocentric abled bodies, that they don't include disabled children, what they classify as disabled children, or different. I don't like to classify disabled children. I like to say different intelligence, that we have different intelligent beings. They don't classify those, that if you're not, you don't fit into the society, you can't function, or you can't produce the work that they want you to produce. That if you go in a classroom and you can't get straight A's, or you can't sit down for 8 hours, which is absurd to have kids sit in the classroom for 8 hours to do
Mhm.
worksheets, and you have to pass these standardized tests. And if you can't do that, then you're not productive in our society.
Mhm.
And it's even worse when you're a black child and when you're a black student, that you not only are you have this, neurological differences, but now you're black, and so you're double labeled.
Mhm.
And so for our children, they get, when they're put into these schools, they're ostracized, where our sons and are labeled as behavior problems. Our daughters are labeled as, daydreamers, or they're labeled as not being successful, or they don't have any futures, and there's no support for our kids.
Mhm.
And the way our system sets it up, they set it up for, if you, like I said, you can't fit into this box, you're not productive in society. And because we live in such a capitalist world, that if you can't produce the amount of money that, or you can't produce, not money, if you can't produce the amount of work that they want you to produce, then you are labeled as unfunctioning, or non-productive in society. And
And
like I said, oh, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, and it's the type of work,
Mm-hmm.
you
That's
know, the work
yes.
that does not challenge the system, the work that tells you just to do as you are told, not the work, not the creative work that these
Mm-hmm.
brilliant minds can come up with. So they don't
Yes.
hone in on what's right, or hone in on where the talent and their creativity and their expression
Mm-hmm.
lies. It's more honing in on, like you said, productivity. You didn't do this the right way, you didn't do this as you were told, under any conditions. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how we are taught to learn. It doesn't matter what type of day you are having, it doesn't matter what's going on in your environment, or it doesn't matter that you're hungry.
Yes, we don't consider those things. And in our society, when we have neurodivergent children, that, and you brought up the point, because I was going to bring up that the creativity, that we don't focus in on their intelligent base, that I look at them as so intellectual based. And I'm going to use my son for an example. Khalil, he is a superb athlete. This boy, literally, he's 7 years old, and he's performing at a third and fourth grade math level. And he literally taught himself most of the stuff, and he taught himself by watching sports. I know another little girl who is autistic, was nonverbal, but she can hear music, and the way she was communicating with people with music, and she can literally hear a sound and take that sound and recompose that exact sound that she just heard. I've seen another child who has her artistic skills and the way she can draw, where she can see an image. And I thought this was the most amazing thing. It's a student of mine. I met her, and I, went over a lesson. I gave instructions to the class, and within 20 minutes, she handed me this photo, and she had took a sketch and drew a complete photo of me. With her, the whole time I was up there talking, she was sketching and drew that photo of me. And I'm like, I've seen these amazing gifts our people can use, in our society use, but we don't deem as those as productive. That if you're in the classroom and you're caught, you're doodling instead of paying attention, you get in trouble.
Right,
You can get in trouble for that.
right.
If you want to run around and you want to play basketball, or if you're learning your class, like my son, when he learns, he moves. He gets up and he moves. He has trouble sitting still. And you may think he's not paying attention to you, but he can recite. You give him a math problem, he can recite it back to you in a couple seconds. Any type of math problem, algebra, you give it to him, he can figure it out. And you turn it to the sports way, he can figure it out. And I always say, like, we don't look at intelligence differently. Like, we label somebody as Albert Einstein, he's an intelligent person. He's a genius. He's a genius. And, we started to talk about his intelligent levels. But I always argue that people like him and LeBron James, or as much as I hate to say this person, I'm going to say him anyway, Kanye West,
Yeah.
they're all on those same level as having intelligent bases, but they're different. They master different parts of the body. That somebody like LeBron James master the kinesthetics of the body, where he has a genius level, where he's able to move the body in ways that a normal person cannot do. Where
Mhm.
Kanye West, he's able to listen to different. I saw this one video of this sound he did. It's Ludacris song, Stand Up. You know that song? You ever heard that beat, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You know
Mhm.
that beat is a complete sample of a whole nother song, and he took a
Mhm.
song and he can listen to different parts of that song, the composer made it a completely different beat. And when I
Mhm.
heard that, I was like, "There's no way this man mind is normal. No person can do that."
Mhm.
That takes a whole different level of intelligence to be able to compose and be able to do stuff like that that your average person cannot do. And we don't look at that as being productive. We don't look at that as being a level of geniusness or a level as being highly intelligent as somebody as Albert Einstein. And I
And
think that's what we fail our children.
in fact, it's the opposite. So you'll see so many classrooms, and this needs to be, it probably is. As a researcher, I might go pull a study, because I'm sure someone has done a study on what has happened in the public school systems when they literally got rid of most of the arts programs, the music programs, recess, movement, all of the things that are foundational for how we interact, how we integrate, how we learn. So we ain't gonna even talk about curriculum, because that's another whole can of worms there. But thinking about the basics. And so juxtapose that against the school to prison pipeline and the timing. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Of really removing any aspect of creativity, any aspect of different ways of learning, and relegating that to not necessary, relegating that to, we don't have time for that, we just want you to learn to take this test, like, you know what I'm saying? And I can guarantee you that there is a correlation there
Well,
between, yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna dive deeper in that because I'm gonna even go into the cultural aspect. Because even growing up, how many times have you heard, if you knew those, you knew your books the way you knew those songs, you would be a straight
Mhm.
A student.
Mhm.
How many of us, even our own culture, shame our children for expressing their own creativity? So it
Yes,
goes deeper than just the system. It even goes into our own households. Even growing
absolutely.
up, where you're told that no, you shouldn't be on a computer playing with that stuff. You need to be doing your schoolwork. You need to be reading a
Absolutely.
book.
Mhm.
What if that child's intelligent level was him being on that computer and him expressing himself through that area? What if that child's emotional level or that intelligent level was through music? And you just took that creativity from that child and told them that music is not where you're going to excel at. Read this book.
Yep.
And we do it in our own homes, and it excels out into the school system as well, where they remove these things from the, because they don't deem this as important. We don't
Mm.
deem it as some a child learning kinesthetics or a child learning through arts as important.
Yeah.
I'm teaching a class right now at university. It's a social studies art integrated class, and one of the things I talk about is how well our students, especially today's kids, they learn so well through movement. They learn so well, and they pay attention more when they can turn things. Like if I have a kid who can write an essay, great. I can have that same kid show me that same level of intelligence by them turning that same concept into a song, or turning
Mhm.
that same concept and directing a video, or making it to a play, or turning it to an art project. You
Mhm.
showed me that same mastery by me giving you your own creativity, and you showing me expressing your creativity, but you're still learning that concept. And I think we remove that from our school systems. We remove that from even in our households. We remove that if you're not reading a book, or if you're not, learning the way I want you to learn the way society tells you that you're supposed to learn, and you're not learning. And
Absolutely.
that's what I try to remove from my schools. That's at Neurocatalyst Academy. That I learned what the kids are interested in. I learned what they learn best with, and I focus in how teaching that way. Like for example, with my son, when we do a lot of games, we do a lot of learning. He learns. He's competitive.
Mhm.
The best way I can
Mhm.
get him to engage is turn everything into a game. That half of the time he doesn't even realize that he's learning, because I've turned it into a game. Like I got him to sit down and do a 60-question assessment. Khalil don't sit down and sit down for anything. And I
Mhm.
got him to sit down and do a 60-question assessment because I took that and I turned it into a game, and I made it fun for him. And we
Mhm.
removed the fun out of our learning. We removed the fun out of and the creativity out of our school systems. And even like I said, even out of our homes. That even in
Yeah.
our homes we're told, don't listen to that music, get off the computer, don't stop singing those songs, read a book. And I'm not saying that
Mhm.
that's not something that we don't need to do, but it's ways you can show or teach and have those intelligent ways, but
Well,
also show their creativity.
Well, I'll give you a perspective from someone who has now two adult sons, and I was that mother that unconsciously reinscribed that same harm because that is what was taught. So we deal a lot with, well, I deal a lot with intergenerational trauma and intergenerational healing, and we have learned that in order to survive in the system, we got to do everything the right way, that there is no room for error. There is no room for B's and C's. You have to be that straight A student. And as a mother who has seen that full circle in her adult children, what that bred. So yes, I had both my sons were excellent students, went to school every day, perfect attendance, did all the things the right. But what that bred was adults who can't self regulate, adults who will stay in terrible situations just to get the A, to do the right thing, who will give all their time and energy in environments that are causing them harm because they can't recognize harm, because it's about getting the job done. It's about productivity. It's about not missing a day of work. I can't miss a day of work. It's not about paying attention to your mental health. It's not about paying attention to your creativity. It's not about, I look back now and I'm like, what the fuck? All them A's, like, what did that really mean in the grand scheme of things? When I look at, both my sons, it doesn't. And now they both are getting back or trying to reclaim a sense of creativity, a sense of authority and autonomy within their own. So we don't teach that. We don't teach how to have that authority and that autonomy within your own journey, within your own path, within your own creativity. We teach them to be like everybody else. And if you cannot be like everybody else, and if you cannot make the grade, then you are not going to be successful in life. And that is the furthest from the truth. But again, it also teaches you not to be able to think critically, to think for yourself. So one of the things that you touched upon just now that I wanted to ask you about is, how do we reimagine, and in what ways would you reimagine education in a system for us to really be able to go back? What I say is kind of go back to the basics, centering our bodies, our spirits, our purpose, our passion, our creativity within, creating spaces that honor that honor us from a cultural standpoint. So if you could talk about ways that you would reimagine, even looking at the curriculum, a more inclusive space for neurobrilliant children.
I think first of it takes us learning. We have to learn to educate ourselves on what neurodivergent is and what neurodivergent children are, how to respond to them. And I think it takes, what you brought up was the generational trauma. It takes a lot of unhealing from that generational trauma. And I think a lot of us knew, or a lot of us growing up, especially in my generation, our parents, and I don't fault our parents for this, because they didn't know, they weren't educated, and in their eyes, they were protecting us from things where when they may have known something might have been different, they may have been told something might have been different. Their first thing to do was defend their child and to run away from those systems, because the ideologies of the system is trying to label your child as something bad. And I think that for us, it takes first educating ourselves on what neurodivergent is and healing from the generational trauma that we have. And it takes us to understanding that there's nothing wrong with our kids, that them being labeled as autistic, being labeled as neurodivergent, being labeled as ADHD, that's not a hinder to them. It's more so them being able to have an understanding, being able to put a name to what's different about them. And I kind of speak for myself. Growing up, I remember being different. I remember being kind of labeled, and not being labeled as lazy, defiant, or not productive and things like that. I remember being labeled as those things and being told those things and being told that I focus in on the wrong things, and being punished for things that now that as an adult I now know were because of my neurological difference, that it was things that I could not control, that I was being labeled for things and being punished for things that I had no control on. And this is where I kind of give my generation, the millennials, kind of a boost, is that we're more open and more recognizing of mental health. And we're more open and recognizing and getting our children help and recognizing that there's a difference in them, that they're let's say, oh, but they're a little different. And we are open to that. And I think that that's step one, is learning what it is, learning how to support our children, and then learning the difference in our kids. And I know I've seen this post that this lady said that, the studies for especially things like autism was always centered around white males, that there wasn't much work going on around, Black children or even women. There wasn't work going around those, that the autism was always looked at as the white man disease, or not disease, but white man disorder. Um, and now that there's more studies and things being done on it, like for example that they said that neurodivergent or autistic children are not empathetic. That's not true. They have some of the most highly empathetic things, and they also struggle with rejection syndrome disorder, where they are extremely, when I say feel, they feel that energy. So when you're down, they feel those energy. When you're in pain, they feel that. And it takes us learning that, being empathetic with our children, having that, building that space for them. And once we educate ourselves, then I think that it makes it easier for us to open up, and we know how to support them in different ways. It took me learning my son, and then also learning myself, because he opened up doors and for me that, and taught me things about myself that I didn't learn. And I know I'm kind of going off subject with this one, but like online with people, like so many different things, or autism, so many kids being diagnosed with autism and things these days. And I always say that if your child has autism, you should probably get yourself tested out too, because 9 times out of 10 you probably are neurodivergent yourself, and you're walking around undiagnosed and don't know it. And the more that you're able to understand your child and understand yourself, you're able to support your child more. And now that I have a name for me, and I have a diagnosis for myself, and I educated myself more, I am able to build that space for my son. I'm able to support him in different ways. And that's, I think, is the first step that our community needs to do, is we need to educate ourselves, and not being afraid to acknowledge that, there is a neurodivergent, that there is a divergent in our community, that we may also be neurodivergent. We may also have those same diagnoses. We need to learn not to be afraid of that. And that takes that healing. That's part of the healing process, I believe, is that educating ourselves first, and then addressing those generational trauma.
Yeah. So when you talk about diagnoses, because I want to unpack that a little bit, because I'm of the school of thought that when you diagnose something, you tend to pathologize it. But I like how you named how most of the diagnoses have been centered around white males in terms of neurodivergency, or in terms of ADHD, autism, etc. And we already know that it shows up differently, especially when you compound it with the historical and intergenerational trauma, and the environments, the unsettling, unstable environments that a lot of our Black and brown children are products of, or have grown up in, or have come up in, and so it can also be compounded by external factors and circumstances. So when you talk about diagnoses, how does that, not that we don't need it, because there are resources out there. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what would be next. So yes, it is important, so you can understand, okay, yeah, I do have a child that learns different, that processes different, that experience different, that integrates information different, and I see myself in that. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, as an adult, wow, I see myself in that. I'm learning. So now what? And why is it important, at least at that initial stage, to have a diagnosis, thinking about what resources are out there, thinking about kind of the what next, thinking about the conversation that you have that doesn't necessarily, as you say something is wrong with you or say something needs to be fixed, because it's not about it being fixed. It's about it being acknowledged, and then creating the spaces that honor that very unique and that very different way of learning. And so what would you say um to that, and speaking to again the diagnosis, and then the what next, then the creating of the spaces, and then the resources, and then so thinking about that.
Um, a diagnosis is important. Since you brought up the resources availability, that without a diagnosis, you don't have access to a lot of resources. Having a diagnosis does open up the doors to a lot of resources and a lot of therapeutical help. Since I've gotten Khalil his diagnosis, I've been able to like apply for things like I might mispronounce, but DDD services, which can be helped with things for like therapeutic will pay, like for example some of his medical bills, because those get really expensive. His therapy services like ABA, cognitive therapy, behavioral therapy, all the therapies that he has, that gets really expensive. It adds up. Even if you have private pay insurance, that stuff does add up after a while. So you, with having this diagnosis, you do have access to different resources like Social Security. You can have access to that. You can access to DDD services, depending on your state. Like for example, I homeschooled him, and he attends my school, so he has access to things like ESA. And ESA is funding that I can get with the state, and because he has a diagnosis, he receives a lot more funding than if he was just a universal student. So having those diagnoses does open the door to get different resources and have access to different resources. And even having a diagnosis, like for example, there are different grants. Like I just applied for him to get a Christmas grant. Like if you have a child who has autism, they have different organizations who give out like free gift cards to families with autistic children, or they have things like they give out like tablets or different educational devices that you can get. So there are different grant opportunities you have available. So having that diagnosis opens the door to being able to provide resources to your child and to your household. And then also being able to have that help and have that support that our children do need. So I know some people are afraid to step in and get those diagnoses going to the doctor, but it is very important that you do get those diagnoses, because they can open those doors and get those resources that your children do need. So yes, I'm
and
very.
and from there, where do you suggest? So now you have the resources, and you talked about therapy. So where can parents, what avenues, or what outside of financial resources and therapy, where can parents go to get the support that they need? What if parents need to, like, what are some educational alternatives? Because the school system is the system, and it's really not, I don't foresee it changing anytime soon. And so what you are noticing is more parents doing homeschooling and looking at micro schools, et cetera. So can you talk a little bit about kind of, again, the what next? Okay, my child has the diagnosis, now I have some resources, I can get some therapy, but how do I put them in environments that aren't, again, this is not about fixing or healing
Mhm.
necessarily, it is about how do you acknowledge the ways in which they learn, and then put them in environments that encourage that. So if you could talk a little bit about what some of those environments are. And then you mentioned micro schools, but I don't think a lot of people know exactly what, micro schools are. So if you could talk about that a little bit.
Well, as a parent, that's kind of where Neurocatalyst came from. And I'll go into, well, I'll start with this. When it comes down to resources and finding those places for our children, yes, do schools for autistic kids exist? Yes, I've seen them. Yes, the schools for neurodivergent kids exist. I've seen some of them, and I've gotten mixed reviews with those. One of the reasons why I started Neurocatalyst Academy was because I could not find places for my child. I could not find spaces that fit for him, especially where we were. We live in Arizona. Um, we tried the public school route, and now, if you know anything about Arizona, we're not one of the highly educated fields where we have, I think we're 51st out of 50 states in public education system. But for other states, like if you do have a child neurodivergent and they do have the diagnosis, that you are supposed to be able to get special services through the schools and the public school systems. However, me as an educator working in the education system and being a parent, I can personally say, and I can at least say from my district and the things and from my experience, that I don't feel like our children are supported in those classrooms. And it's not necessarily that the teachers are not supporting them. Yes, they have special ed services, but I'm just speaking from my experience as a classroom. I had sometimes 30, 35 kids in the classroom, and I have IEPs of kids given to me, and I have to make these IEPs work. And I'm telling you as an educator that not that I didn't try or I didn't want to make those things work, but it's almost impossible to be able to provide those catered to education to a kid when you have 35 kids in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the reason why one of the reasons why I kind of went into my own education, started my own school, is because there's not that many sources that I can honestly say that are out there that I know of that are for our kids or specifically built for our Black neurodivergent children. And that's why I label Neurocatalyst Academy as the first micro school for Black and brown neurodivergent kids. And kind of say what a micro school is. It's kind of the new wave of schools that's going in with today is more so a smaller environment, more inclusive learning style is kind of what they label as like the new modern one room school type of things. And it's a different way, non-traditional style of learning, the traditional style of way schools are organized. And like, for example, my school, my micro school is that we are very small. I have a 1-to-7 teacher ratio. We never have more than 15 kids in the building at once. It's very impersonalized. It's more of a home school feeling. Where it's just more, it's basically kind of way I could best describe it. It's more so extended out from homeschooling, but more of a co-op kind of place where students learn, and there's different ways that we to have it. So I know I'm a part of a program called Chiapod, and there's different micro schools where they have micro schools that are catered for different faith-based, different religions, different sports centered the micro schools. So it's different micro schools, and my micro school specifically is built around the minds and built around the learning styles of Black and brown neurodivergent kids. And like I said, one of the reasons why I started my school is because I could not find sources out there that was providing the things that I needed for my son. And one thing that Neurocatalyst Academy offers is not only do we centralize and focus in on the neurodivergent, it's neurodivergent friendly, it's a sensory friendly spot. We also focus in on cultural relevance, where our children are they're not just in the classroom learning, but they see reflections of themselves, where they learn about who they are. They see reflections of them in their curriculum. They see reflections of them in their learning, and they're celebrated, where they're not just, you have to tolerate, you have to sit in this classroom and, behave like you're supposed to for however long. You are celebrated and you learn on your learning style. So that's the reason why I created the school I did, because like I said, within 2 years with my son, we have been to 6 different schools. I tried so many different places. I tried public schools, I tried charter schools, I tried private schools, I tried other micro schools, and everything was the same situation. It's not a good fit. It's not working out for him,
So what's the when you say that, what is the thread that does work? Because there are a lot of parents in the same boat, in the same predicament that you are in. So what can you say has helped, has worked, that you want to encourage parents to look at when they are looking at resources, when they are looking at spaces, when they are looking at the possibility of maybe putting their child in a micro school? Because the thing about it is, a lot of parents in that predicament, they do homeschooling, but there are also a lot of parents that can't, that their jobs, et cetera, won't, allow them the time to do it, and then build a curriculum, et cetera. So what, in your experience, what is working and has worked for you, and based upon your research, what is working kind of out there, for specifically for Black and Brown students?
Um, I actually did a webinar talking about, the steps of homeschooling and different options that parents may have. Because I do know that homeschooling is an option, but I acknowledge this, that homeschooling your child can be a privilege, because not very many of us have the option to where we can homeschool our children, where a lot of us come from single parent households where the parent has to work, or both parents have to work, and they just don't have the time to be able to facilitate and provide those services for their kids. That
Mm-hmm.
homeschooling is hard, but it's not impossible. Even if you're a single parent, or even if you work, it's not impossible. We have been conditioned to think that our kids need to be sitting in the classroom to 6 to 7 hours to learn. That they have to be, that if you're not getting 6 to 7 hours of instruction, you're not learning. That's actually false. That really, in real true time, that if you're doing especially one-on-one work, that your child only needs about maybe two, depending on the age level. The younger kids, probably about, I'm going to say younger than first and second grade, they only need about an hour to 2 hours of instruction, about an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours of instruction. And that's direct instruction, going over different core lessons. And as they get older, they really don't need anything extended more than 4 hours of learning instruction. And this is something that, even if you work a full-time job, that you can come home and do, where you can come home and provide an hour or two, just providing those educational services for your kids. But I know a lot of parents have those struggles in providing different services. So when it comes down to different things, like when you have neurodivergent kids, that they do have offers, like if you have ABA services, sometimes therapeutic services can help provide childcare during the day and things like that. There are also online services. There are different things like micro schools, and I would recommend people looking in your area. There's different platforms, like I said, I'm a part of KaiaPod, and KaiaPod is a place you can go online and you can search in your area, and it will search different micro schools in your area that provide different services for your kids. Now, I would recommend visiting those places, and also giving your children a day if they offer. You can now talk to the schools and see if they offer maybe like a discovery day. I know in Neurocatalyst Academy we offer a discovery day, where I don't ever want you to enroll your kid here and then you find out that it's not a good fit, or their kid doesn't like it. I want you guys to see it for yourself. So I offer discovery day, where they can come in and you can see how the classroom is ran. They can spend the day there. They can learn there. So I would recommend asking that to see if you can see if that's available for the schools. But you just have to do a lot of research, and it does take time. You have to do a lot of research in your area. Just look for different areas of micro schools. There are plenty of micro schools. That's like the new wave in education right now. Like I said, I am part of the KaiaPod community, and when I started out, they started out with other, like I want to say about 50 different founders. So, and they're all over different areas. We have some in Arizona, Georgia. I was working with people in North Carolina, some in Illinois. So they're all in Texas as well. So they're popping up. So I will look into that, just finding out and talking to the schools, letting them know, being very transparent what you're looking for, what support you need, and seeing if these schools can provide them.
Yeah.
And like I said, with my struggle and what I had was what led me to start Neurocatalyst Academy, and what led me to, starting and founding my own school, was the struggles that I had, trying to locate different resources for my son.
Yeah. Well, lastly, I want to talk about what's next for you, what's next for Neurocatalyst Academy, and how we can keep this conversation going. Because the one thing that is clear is that this is a ongoing dialogue that needs to be had in terms of discovering ways, resources, opportunities for our children. Because the more and more that's happening in the public school systems, and the breakdown and the collapse, there are going to have to be more spaces created for our children to be safe, to be emotionally safe,
Mm-hmm.
to learn, to explore, to experience. And we have this whole new, like, these young folks are coming here like so intuitive, like so connected, that they are not, teachers all over are struggling, with these new kids coming through, because they are highly sensitive, which is
Mm-hmm.
forcing, it has to force either the system to change, or it will instantly cause harm to the children. And so a lot of parents are starting to really awaken and say, you know what, I need something different. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's where I also see a lot of these micro schools and smaller schools, again going back to the basics, sprouting up. And so as we close out, I just want you to, if you can just share some final thoughts with the listeners, as well as how they can continue in conversation with you, and what you have planned next, be it webinars, be it open house, like what, how can they stay connected to you in this work?
Yeah. So I don't want to get into politics, but I'm gonna kind of touch on a little bit. Just kind of make a statement that what's going on today, and what's going on in the climate that we see, like things like dismantlement, or the attempted dismantlement of the Department of Education, the lack of fund, or the layoffs with the special education departments that we saw. I think now more than ever is the time we need to really look at alternative educations for our children.
Mhm.
Um, I do think that there's issues in the public education system that we have. I think that there's problems, but I also think that it is time now more than ever for especially our Black and our brown children to unite and us to start making spaces for our own children.
Mhm.
It's literally that time that we need to start deviating from the Eurocentric world and the modern society that we have today. We need to start creating those spaces like we did once upon a time. Today it's the time that we start doing that again.
Yeah.
That we're going to make our community great again, as they say.
Yes. Yes.
And that's what we need to start doing again.
Yes.
And I think that that would be step one, is that we need to start looking at alternative spaces, looking at creating those spaces. And it also brings me to a conversation. I know this is gonna kind of go left, but I think in our community, we need to start aligning and trusting our people more, and we need to start deviating from traditional norms and standards. And I kind of give a little short story about, experience I had where I had a mom come and visit our school. We say we want these spaces. We talk about how we want these centers for our places. And a mom came and visited, and it was not like the traditional setting that she was used to. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I get it. I get it that it was not, the norm and what she was used to seeing. But in our community, that if we want spaces, if we want to, we have to be aligned. We have to trust those spaces. We have to be able to unlearn that traditional settings, that if we want to have these spaces for our kids, it's not going to look like what we're used
Exactly.
to. It's not
Exactly.
going to be the same, and we don't want it to be the
To
same.
be the
We
same.
want it to be
Exactly.
different.
Yes.
And I think that that's what our community needs to start focusing on, and we need to start looking to supporting ourselves, stop supporting these, or looking at the people to build spaces for us. They're not going to.
They're
We've been
not.
asking for spaces to be built for us for how long we've been here now.
Right. Right. Right.
They're not going to
And
build spaces
and
for
the point
us.
that you made in terms of trusting, we don't
Hmm.
trust.
We don't trust
We
each other.
say what we want, but
Yes.
we don't trust ourselves to
And we
create
set
it
our
and deliver
expectations
it,
up here.
especially if it doesn't look like whiteness.
Yes.
If
And
it
the way
does
we
not
have
look
our,
like a white institution, then we got a problem with it.
hmm hmm
We
if it
talk
doesn't favor
about
them,
the polo and the Tommy Hill, so it's like that. But when you got the person who is building and designing something for us by us, we like, oh, we don't want
hmm
that.
yeah, yep, same thing, yep. Or we like you said, we don't trust it, or we have the expectations that we hold for our own people, we don't hold for them.
Right.
So it's having that trust and building our trust and being able to align in our own community, and not judging our community harsher than we do others. That the penalty that we put on our community, we don't hold them to the same standards. Um, but it's not going to look the same. And our community has to work together. We have to align, and we have to look at these spaces for our kids. And I've seen other micro schools open up for Black and brown children. I've built my own space for Black and brown children, and I'm opening these spaces, and I'm trying to expand. I want to continue to build spaces for our kids. I don't think that Black neurodivergent children are talked about or celebrated enough. I don't think we have enough spaces for us. I don't think that our children are celebrated enough, and that's what our school and what we're trying to do and what we're building. Um, and as you said, like some events that we have coming up, we're going to be diving in more. I'm going to be collabing with Dr. Kimberly Davis, and we're going to be talking about a webinar on Wednesday. I'm sorry, Thursday. This Thursday, that's the 4th, right? Yes, December 4th, and we're talking more diving into alternative education for our children, supporting Black neurodivergent kids. Um, and navigating and talking about even looking at being a neurodivergent parent yourself, and how do you support a neurodivergent child, and what education systems do we have available for them. And then additionally, some events that we have at the NCA. We have our summer camp. It's not summer anymore. Our winter camp is coming up. Hold on. Our winter camp is coming up December 20. Sorry, make sure I get the right date. Sorry, December 29th through the 30th. We're gonna have our camp, and that's gonna be from 9:30 to 2:30. It's just a regular day. You can drop off. It's completely free, just to give a chance to see our facility. Also have some more events coming up. We're going to be starting our candle making workshop at the school, and then also have an open house coming up around the new year. So those are up and coming dates, and I'll be sharing more information. So if you're interested, please leave your email, and we will, connect with you via email and send you more information about our school. Or if you just want to support, please connect us. Our website is www.neurocatalyst.academy.org, and you can connect with us
Okay,
that way.
let me put that website correct. It's Neurocatalyst
Academy.
Academy.org. Awesome.
Yes. So you can check us out
Neurocatalyst
there if you're interested, and
Academy.
just come and see our facility, a tour, or just getting support. We also, even though we are in person, we do offer online services like tutoring, and also hybrid classes, where if you want to take classes online, you can do so as well. So even if you're not located in Arizona, we do offer support nationwide.
Yeah. Awesome. So thank you, thank you, thank you. One of the things that I want to preface is that when we talk about creating our own institutions and having them not look like the institutions that y'all used to, or funding, resources, and so Neurocatalyst Academy is a part of Journey Healing Institute, but we're a non-for-profit, and we can't keep the doors open without resources, without donations, without your help. So again, when we say we want to build community, when we say we want to build for us, by us, we need for us and by us to support. And so if you are so inclined to allow us to keep doing this work for our women, for our children, for our communities, for our men, for all those who we are doing this incredible work for, then go to our website, help us with whatever donation, whatever and however you can support this healing work. You can go to journeyhealinginstitute.com and just show us your support, because one thing that they are not going to fund our revolution, right? We have to be able to do that, and to keep doing this work, we do need your help and your support. And so, with that said, I just want to thank you again, Kira, for all of the incredible work that you are doing. It is very, very difficult work, especially when you are trying to shift a mindset, when you're trying to decolonize a whole education system to create something new. It's always very, very difficult in terms of getting the support that you need, getting the ears perked and people listening to be able to make that shift, to make the change. But we're clear that the work is so desperately needed. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. Wishing you much continued success. You all, we're in it, and so we're going to continue to build the programs, to build the resources with everyone in mind, and in terms of healing and educating our communities. So Any final words, Kira? If not, we're going to sign off.
Well, I just want to thank you for hosting it, hosting this podcast. I think it's very much needed. I think that the conversation for sure needs to continue and even expand, especially talking about the neurodivergency in our community. I think it's something that doesn't get talked about enough, and something that we need to really zero in and to help not only support but also heal our community as well.
Absolutely.
So yes, thank you for hosting it today.
Thank you. Talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.